right, in today's video, we're going to be going through some of the biggest upsets in MMA history, not just in the UFC, as we lead up to UFC 302, because there does seem to be some utterly delusional people out there in the MMA community that think Dustin Poirier has no chance of beating Islam Makhachev. So I thought this would be a good time to look back throughout our history as MMA fans and realize that when everybody thought that there was only going to be one winner on the night, everybody got it wrong. I'm going to do 5 of them. Let's get into it right away. Number 5, Michael Bisping knocking out Luke Rockhold via KO. First round, won the UFC middleweight championship. I remember this all the way back in 2016. It is one of my earliest UFC fandom memories. And to me, to be honest, I didn't understand the implications of it back at the time because I was just getting into the sport. But now, looking back at it, it is so crazy that Bisping was able to do it. Nobody believed in him. They all thought that he was the far worst fighter on the night. And all I can remember from that night, or one of the biggest takeaways I have from that night, was just the smug look on Luke Rockhold's face when he was standing there as they were doing the announcement. It looked like Luke Rockhold couldn't even be bothered being there. He was not even giving Bisping a chance. And if you remember Bisping back in the day, he was such a Chad back then. Not just the nerfed down Disney, ESPN Michael Bisping that we have now. He would say whatever the hell he wanted. He was the loud, drunken Englishman, and he quickly became one of my favorite fighters on the roster when I first started following the UFC and getting into the sport. It was absolutely brilliant to see him win that belt against such a smug-looking bloke in Luke Rockhold, just as smug as Team Dagestan is going into UFC 302, so they better watch out, mate. Number 4 on the list. This one is going to be a little bit obscure to some of the other MMA fans out there because this one is over at One Championship, okay? Adriano Morales. He defeated Mighty Mouse Johnson via KO in the second round. One of the only men, I think the only man to ever actually knock out Mighty Mouse. It was so incredible for me to watch this one because I'd been following One for so long. It's available for free for us on YouTube over here in Australia. And I'd been following One for so long, and Mighty Mouse as well. He was always one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Then to see him come over to One was so weird for me, and to watch that fight go down, to see Demetrious Johnson get knocked out in a different organization by one of the things that separates the two, knees to a grounded opponent, is how Demetrious Johnson lost that fight. He was knocked out in a slumped position up against the cage via a knee to the face, and it just made me realize how big of a difference is the gap between the UFC and One, why One is always so much more exciting to watch. I have to say, if you are sick of watching endless UFC Apex cards and they just get so boring to you, please put on any One Championship fight card, and I guarantee you are going to have a sick time watching it. It's so much fun to see somebody knock out Demetrious Johnson in a different organization under a different rule set. Completely unbelievable. Number three. And honestly, this one was before I first got into the sport, but it is something that I went back and watched and really understood the context of, and it definitely deserves to be on this list. And that's Matt Serra. It's Matt Serra defeating George St. Pierre via TKO in the first round, and him winning the welterweight championship all the way back in 2007. Man, I wish I got to experience this live so I could actually understand the context of it. But going into this, George St. Pierre was already being considered as one of the greatest fighters of all time, one of the greatest fighters on the planet, running his career in parallel with Anderson Silva. They were MMA. And everyone just thought that Matt Serra could come out and not do anything to GSP. And the fact that he actually went out there and did that in the first round was completely unexpected by the entire old grey beanie tap out wearing MMA community. All right, back in the day when it was just tap out and only tap out, they were the ones. Nobody saw Matt Serra being able to pull it off. It would be like Dustin Poirier running across the cage, blasting a double leg on Islam Makhachev and beating the living piss out of him. That's pretty much what happened all the way back in 2007 and what we might see again at UFC 302. Okay, next one, the second one up on the list. It has to be Leon Edwards knocking out Kamaru Usman at UFC 2. It has got to be one of the biggest upsets of all time. That's why it's going at number 2 on my list. Think about it. Leon Edwards was not expected to win this fight going into it. And then as the fight played out, it continued to prove to everybody that Kamaru Usman was just the better fighter. He was winning almost every single minute of that fight. That's what makes this upset phenomenal. He was losing all the way until the point where he wasn't. The commentary team, Joe Rogan, John Anik, were talking openly about how Leon Edwards is going to be happy that he was just able to survive the fight. He is going to be walking out of that cage with his head held high that he actually didn't get finished by Kamaru Usman. Remember, this is when Kamaru Usman's jab just turned into a piston. It was knocking people out. And then when the all was lost moment, Leon Edwards lands the perfect head kick and absolutely shocks the MMA world in what would go down as the second biggest upset in our history. Imagine in some horrible, horrible universe where Islam Makhachev is somehow actually winning all 24 minutes of the 25-minute fight with Dustin Poirier, and we're all just sitting there, everybody in the MMA world is sitting there like, oh my God, I can't believe this is actually happening to one of the greatest fighters of all time. And then Dustin Poirier is actually able to roll out from underneath Islam Makhachev and finally land that guillotine in the last minute. That is essentially what we saw with Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. All right, last one up. Okay, number one, the number one biggest upset to me in all of MMA history. Before I get to that, I know what a tease. Guys, I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs. If you want to help me out, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, hit that subscribe button. It means so much to small creators like myself. I'm trying to hit that goal before my birthday around mid-July. Also, I'm going to be live streaming all of UFC 302, so if you want to join me for that, no more deflecting. The number one biggest upset. And the reason that I am putting this at number 1 as the biggest upset, because on this list, we have got some champions. And some of these, were they all champions? Is everyone a champion on this list? I think it was. Anyway, on this list, everybody who lost the fight sort of lost the fight very, very quickly, either in the first round or in the Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards example. It was just winning, and stopped paying attention for a second. I really do believe in the context of that fight, Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman, he stopped paying attention just for a second and Leon was able to capitalize. I know Leon went on to win their rematch after that, but when you look at all of that, it really was Luke Rockhold not taking Michael Bisping seriously. It was a GSP not taking Matt Serra seriously. It was Kamaru Usman dropping his guard for a second. There are reasons that you could see why the person who was the favorite lost. But in this one, in number 1, the person who came in as the favorite not only lost the first round, but with all of their skill set of how dominant they are and how much of a elite striker they are, even though they couldn't stand and bang with Kelvin Gastelum. At no point during that 25 minutes could they reach down into their toolbox and actually find the skill set required to win that fight. It was a complete shutout across all 5 rounds. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It wasn't a fluke like some of their fat fans say it was. It was an absolute skill set overload, which makes it the number 1 upset to me in all of UFC history. Sean Strickland finally defeating Israel Adesanya in Sydney at UFC 293. A complete domination over all 25 minutes. Truly an unbelievable moment for all of the MMA community. The amount of hype and praise that Israel Adesanya was getting for his striking going into that fight. The chances that anybody gave Sean Strickland to win that were probably bigger than Juliana Pena going against Amanda Nunes. Nobody thought that Sean Strickland was going to be able to pull this off. And he didn't just land a lucky punch like some people could say in the first round. He dismantled Israel Adesanya with his skill set over the entire 25 minutes. I don't think there could ever be a bigger upset than that in all of MMA history. That is my list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down there, which ones would you rework? Who would you put at the top of your list? If you did enjoy this video, give it a like, give it a comment, and of course, I will see you all in the next one.